Stop saying y'all. Can't stop you.
You can work too hard for this shit, man.
Work too hard.
Hey, Alabama, I'm waiting.
They finna
Now free my boys, man.
You good? Don't
They
worry.
finna come get you, big sir. They can't get my nigga a break around this hoe.
Rapper Montana 700 just got hit with federal charges, and the streets are buzzing. Prosecutors claim he wasn't just rapping about the hustle. He was living it, moving pounds while flashing success online.
Where you from?
Woodtown, Oak Cliff.
What was once a come-up story about a street kid making it in rap has now turned into a full-blown federal investigation, and word is the feds have been watching him for months, especially after his close homie Zillionaire Doe caught their attention first. Before all the flashing lights and courtrooms, Montana was just another survivor from the trenches. Born and raised in South Dallas, he came up in a place where every dollar was earned the hard way, and every move could be your last. Opportunities were rare, and the streets became the only teacher most kids had. Montana didn't grow up with much. No silver spoon, no easy path. What he did have was ambition, drive, and a fire that couldn't be ignored. When asked where he's from, Montana always said it loud and proud. Woodtown, Oak Cliff. That name carried weight long before the music did. From an early age, he soaked up everything from the old heads. How to flip, how to move, how to make something out of nothing. Trapping wasn't just an activity, it was the lifestyle blueprint. By the time most of his peers were still figuring out school or jobs, Montana was already stacking real paper. The whispers on the block said he wasn't just moving small bags, he was running serious operations. That's how his legend started to form, long before his first track ever hit the internet. People in the streets respected him because he wasn't pretending. He was really living what others only rapped about. But that kind of fame? It's a double-edged sword. The bigger your name gets in the streets, the louder the noise gets in police offices. Cops started asking questions, detectives started circling, and Montana's name kept popping up in reports. The same lifestyle that gave him everything, money, respect, attention, also painted a massive target on his back. The higher he rose, the more dangerous the spotlight became. And now, that past he built his image on is the very thing threatening to take it all away. Local authorities already knew about Montana 700 long before the feds ever showed up. His name had been floating around Dallas police briefings for years, whispered in squad rooms and street corners alike. But what made Montana different from everyone else hustling in the same grind wasn't to just what he did, it was how he moved. He didn't play small or stay quiet in the shadows. He walked with a kind of swagger and confidence that demanded attention everywhere he went. Whether it was a viral live session, a flashy interview, or just stepping out in public, Montana made sure people saw him. He didn't want to blend in. He wanted to stand out. He wasn't just another hustler from the block. He was a symbol of what ambition looked like in the trenches. His energy was loud, fearless, and unapologetic. The hood respected that, and the city started to take notice. Once you get that kind of pull, the music naturally follows. That S when Montana turned his hustle into a microphone, pouring his real-life stories into lyrics that hit harder because they came from lived experience, not imagination. His music felt too real, and that's what made him stand out in a rap scene full of actors. When Montana rapped about moving weight, people didn't question it, they'd already seen it. He had that rare credibility that money, fame, or PR can't buy. But that same authenticity, it comes with a dangerous cost. Because when you're rapping about the life while still living it, the line between entertainment and evidence starts to blur fast. The same bars that gave Montana his street respect were also breadcrumbs for investigators. Detectives started piecing things together, noticing that his lyrics matched unsolved movements, coded slang, and known hot zones in Dallas. His lifestyle, flashy cars, expensive chains, no visible job, started raising eyebrows in the wrong rooms. And when the flash meets federal attention, it's only a matter of time before someone starts digging deeper. Montana's early days built the foundation for both his empire and his downfall. On one side, he became a hero to his block, a voice for those who had nothing. But on the other, he became a glowing target, drawing heat, jealousy, and federal surveillance that was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The streets couldn't get enough of Montana 700. His name carried weight, respect in the hood, buzz in the rap game, and whispers in federal offices. Everyone saw his rise, but only a few knew that behind the flashing lights and studio sessions, the feds were already quietly taking notes. They don't rush. They build cases like puzzles, patiently, methodically, and with receipts. They watch, record, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. By the time Montana started realizing how fast things were moving, he was already standing on the dangerous edge of two worlds, the ruthless hustle that made him and the rap dream that could have saved him. He didn't know it yet, but those early decisions, the same ones that built his street legacy, would later trap him in the same federal web now threatening to take everything away. When Montana finally transitioned from the block to the booth, it didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it hit hard. The streets had already verified him long before the labels or media did. His authenticity gave him something no PR campaign could buy: real credibility. People didn't just hear his name, they believed in it. The same people who saw him grind now watched him rap about that life, and every line hit like truth, not fiction. He started releasing tracks that sounded less like rap songs and more like raw confessions. Bars about flipping packs, dodging raids, and counting dirty cash-painted pictures of survival, not fantasy. He wasn't chasing trends or commercial approval. His flow was gritty, emotional, and unfiltered. Every verse felt like a page ripped from his life. No fancy studio setups, no label polish, just Montana, his crew, and the streets that raised him. His early videos were filmed right in the neighborhoods that built his reputation: cracked sidewalks, corner stores, chain-link fences. That real energy made people pay attention. It wasn't just music, it was a statement. The hood saw itself in him, and soon his clips started flooding social media timelines. Freestyles surrounded by stacks of money, his homies hyping him up. The same hustle he talked about playing out in real time. It all made his story magnetic. Fans didn't see an industry act. They saw a reflection of their own struggle. That's why his buzz exploded. Local DJs started spinning his tracks, blogs began mentioning his name, and Dallas finally had another voice with real street blood in his lyrics. And once his connection to Zillionaire Doe became public, the hype doubled overnight. Every time Doe's name surfaced, Montana's came right with it. Together, they were seen as the next street kings out of Texas. A duo born from the grind, baptized by survival, and now standing under the biggest spotlight of their lives. But little did anyone know that same spotlight was the one the feds were using to zero in on their next move. When Zillionaire Doe's name started echoing through the industry, Montana 700 was never far behind. The two weren't just partners in music, they were reflections of the same grind, the same hunger, the same raw lifestyle that the streets respected. Together, they became walking symbols of survival and ambition, turning pain into power. But that bond came with consequences, because once the feds started circling Doe's world, it was only a matter of time before they turned their focus on everyone standing next to him, and Montana was standing front and center. As Montana's buzz began to skyrocket, so did the visuals. What started as gritty, low-budget neighborhood videos evolved into full-blown cinematic productions. Foreign cars, diamond chains, and every symbol of street glory flashing in front of the camera. The problem? What looked like art to fans looked like evidence to investigators. Every stack of cash, every lyric about moving pounds, every familiar face in the background was another piece of a puzzle the feds were quietly putting together. To his supporters, it was just Montana keeping it real. But to the authorities, it was Montana confirming everything they'd already suspected. He wasn't just a rapper. They believed he was documenting a criminal lifestyle in real time. And while fans replayed his songs for motivation, federal agents replayed them for clues. Still, from a music perspective, Montana was unstoppable. His delivery was sharp, his tone aggressive but controlled, and his lyrics had that realness money couldn't fake. He painted vivid pictures of street survival, so raw you could feel the danger in every bar. The tracks spread fast, and whispers about label interest started floating through the city. Promoters wanted him, local radio spun him, and major industry names began to take notice. For a moment, it seemed like Montana was finally about to make the jump from trap corners to corporate checks. But as the lights got brighter, the past got heavier. Every show, every interview, every freestyle dragged more of his real life into the spotlight. His fans praised him for being authentic, but that same authenticity was the reason law enforcement couldn't look away. They weren't just hearing his music, they were dissecting it. Unlike rappers who exaggerate for clout, Montana didn't need to fake anything. His words carried weight because people in Dallas knew those stories were real. But that is the cruel irony of the rap game. Being too real can cost you everything. His truth gave him fame, but it also tied him to a federal narrative that painted him as more than just an artist. It painted him as a suspect. Every view, every repost, every shout-out boosted his status in the culture, but it also pinged his name higher on the Fed's radar. By the time Montana was taking rap seriously, he wasn't just another up-and-comer. He was a movement. The streets embraced him, the industry acknowledged him, and the system. They were watching every single step he took. Behind the fame, while fans saw Montana's 700 as the next breakout star, the feds were quietly seeing something else. A potential criminal mastermind whose lyrics, lifestyle, and inner circle matched the exact blueprint of an ongoing federal operation. Every time he dropped a new track or video, they weren't just watching the views, they were watching the details. To the public, he was on the verge of superstardom. But to investigators, he was a person of interest, a piece in a much bigger puzzle already in motion. Montana stood at a dangerous crossroads, one path leading toward legitimate success, record deals, and the kind of fame that could have rewritten his life forever. The other path? It led straight back to the same streets that made him. He didn't realize that his music wasn't just building his fan base. It was building the prosecution's case. Every bar, every lyric, every flashy scene in his videos became part of what the feds would later call a pattern of evidence. Work too hard, Alabama. Free my boys, man. They finna come get you, big sir. Those were the words fans screamed online when the news finally broke, because everyone knew something big was coming. Montana's name didn't just appear overnight in federal paperwork. This case had been brewing in the shadows for a long time. When the feds finally make a move, it's never random. It's because they believe they've got the receipts, the surveillance, and the connections to take it all the way to trial. And in Montana 700's indictment, that's exactly what they laid out. A detailed story built on patience, wiretaps, and street credibility turned against him. Sources close to the case say the official charges include conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, possession with intent to distribute, and interstate trafficking. Heavy felonies that don't just carry time, they carry decades. According to the feds, Montana wasn't just operating in Dallas. They allege he was connected to a multi-state pipeline, moving pounds across borders with a tight crew handling everything from transport to cash flow. That's what shifted this from a street-level hustle to a federal-level operation. Local cops couldn't touch it. This was far bigger than one neighborhood grind. It reportedly all started after a series of raids in Montana's neighborhood, where investigators found not just small stashes but serious heat. Bags of money, firearms, encrypted phones, and digital records hinting at a coordinated network. Once the evidence started piling up, the picture became clearer for the feds. Montana wasn't just rapping about the hustle, they believed he was living it at scale. Adding fuel to the fire were his close ties to Zillionaire Doe, whose block had already been raided months prior. That connection allegedly gave agents the green light to start pulling Montana's phone records, tracking his movements, and following the money trail. And when it came time to connect the dots, his name allegedly surfaced more than once, linking him to key figures already under federal watch. The scary part? The feds rarely act on hunches. They wait, they build, and they strike only when the case is airtight. And for Montana, that moment finally came. With his name stamped across an indictment that could change his entire future in one courtroom decision. One of the most chilling parts of the Montana 700 indictment is the mention of wiretap evidence. Court filings suggest that investigators had been monitoring calls for months, listening to coded conversations where Montana's name, or one of his known street aliases, kept popping up in connection to moving weight. Even if he wasn't the one speaking, just being mentioned was enough to drag him straight into a federal conspiracy charge. That is the terrifying part about federal law. You don't even have to be caught red-handed with the drugs. You don't even have to be physically present. If prosecutors can convince a jury that you were part of an agreement, that you played even a small role in a larger network, that alone can get you decades behind bars. The streets know it, but until you see your name in an indictment, you don't realize just how real that rule is. And then comes the part everyone in the game dreads: confidential informants. The paperwork doesn't name names, but sources close to the case believe someone from Montana's own circle flipped. Under federal pressure, loyalty starts to crumble. It's a classic move by the feds: squeeze the smaller players, offer lighter sentences, and make them talk. Once even one person points the finger, and that testimony lines up with wiretaps or surveillance footage, it's over. The prosecution's case becomes airtight. But that wasn't all. The indictment reportedly dug deep into financial records and unexplained wealth, painting a picture of a man living far beyond what his music career alone could justify. Like many rappers with street backgrounds, Montana had a habit of flexing, showing off racks of cash, foreign cars, diamond watches, and designer clothes. To fans, it was just hip-hop culture, but to prosecutors, it was evidence. They argued that the lifestyle didn't add up with his reported income, that the money had to be coming from somewhere else. According to inside reports, the feds pulled bank statements and flagged large, frequent cash deposits that conveniently lined up with the timeline of alleged trafficking activity. Every withdrawal, every deposit became another data point in a financial trail that prosecutors said screamed illegal proceeds. But the investigation didn't stop with money. Agents reportedly combed through Montana's social media, his videos, and even his lyrics. Bars where he bragged about moving pounds or shipping work are allegedly being used against him in court. His art, the same thing that made him famous, is now being twisted into what prosecutors call confession through creativity. It's the same strategy we've seen in countless high-profile cases, where prosecutors blur the line between performance and participation. They take rap lyrics and treat them like diary entries. Defense attorneys will argue that it's all storytelling, entertainment, a reflection of the culture. But juries, they don't always see it that way, especially when the lyrics match real evidence: cash seized, drugs recovered, or weapons found during raids. And after months of buildup, that's when the arrest came. No warning, no leaks, just a coordinated takedown that left fans shocked and the streets buzzing. The artist who once bragged about outsmarting the system was suddenly face to face with it as the feds finally closed in and the reality of the indictment became painfully real. It all came crashing down in the early hours of the morning. Federal agents, backed by local task forces, launched a pre-dawn raid on a property directly tied to Montana 700, and neighbors say it felt like something out of a movie. Witnesses described armored trucks blocking off the entire block while heavily armed officers stormed in with tactical precision. Flashing lights, loud commands, battering rams, the whole scene screamed federal takedown. Montana was reportedly taken into custody without resistance, but several others at the scene weren't as lucky. Agents recovered multiple firearms, stacks of cash, and digital devices they believe hold key evidence tied to trafficking operations. It wasn't just another arrest. It was a message. A calculated high-visibility move meant to show that the feds were done watching and ready to strike. Within hours, Montana was transferred straight into federal custody, and prosecutors wasted no time pushing for him to be held without bond. Their argument was brutal but strategic. They claimed he was both a flight risk and a danger to the community. And in the world of federal drug prosecutions, Those words carry serious weight. The judge didn't hesitate. Montana was ordered to remain behind bars while the case builds against him. For a rapper whose buzz was just starting to explode, the optics couldn't have been worse. The same energy that once made him look unstoppable now made him look like another headline, a rising star brought down by the very life he rapped about. The charges are deadly serious. If convicted, Montana could face mandatory minimums stretching well into decades behind bars. Conspiracy to distribute alone carries a 10-year minimum sentence depending on the quantity, and once you add interstate distribution, those numbers start to rival life terms. That's the kind of time that breaks most men before trial even starts. The feds know exactly what they're doing. They use the weight of those charges to pressure defendants into taking plea deals. They don't have to shout or threaten. The numbers speak for themselves. One misstep, one wrong choice, and your entire life disappears in paperwork and sentencing guidelines. Meanwhile, the streets haven't stopped talking since the arrest. Everyone's got a theory. Some say Montana will stand tall and keep silent. Others whisper that the case might not be as airtight as the feds claim. But here's the harsh truth. Federal prosecutors don't play guessing games. They don't indict unless they're confident they can win. With a conviction rate sitting over 90%, Montana's walking into one of the toughest battles of his entire life. This case shows just how fast the line between rap dreams and real consequences can blur. For Montana 700, the very lifestyle that gave him credibility in the booth, the one that made his songs hit harder than anyone else in S, could now be the reason he spends years fighting for his freedom. The same authenticity that built his name might be the same thing that breaks it. But the biggest question everyone's asking is, why him? Why would the feds zero in on a rapper who was still on the come-up, instead of chasing bigger, faceless players moving product behind the scenes? The answer comes down to visibility, influence, and control. Montana wasn't just another hustler in the streets. He was a symbol. His music carried reach, his videos had views, and his name had pull far beyond Dallas. That kind of influence threatens power structures, because when a voice from the streets starts shaping culture, it attracts more than fans. It attracts federal attention. Montana wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. He was living loud, being seen, being quoted, and being streamed. And in the eyes of law enforcement, that kind of spotlight isn't just dangerous, it's irresistible. Because when you move product and move culture at the same time, you're not just hustling, you're rewriting the narrative. And that's exactly the kind of figure the feds love to make an example out of. By the time the feds came knocking, Montana 700 had already earned a reputation most rappers only dream of: authenticity. He wasn't just spitting bars about trapping, he was living the life that others only pretended to know. That raw, unfiltered image made his music powerful, but it also made him a prime target. To federal prosecutors, Montana wasn't just a street rapper, he was a symbol of influence, the kind of figure who could make the next generation believe the hustle was glamorous. And in their world, influence mixed with criminal allegations equals the perfect high-profile example. In their eyes, Montana wasn't just another hustler trying to make it out. He was a cultural amplifier, someone whose lifestyle, music, and persona could spread street ideology far beyond his block. That made him valuable in a different way, not just to his fans, but to the feds who wanted to send a message. They love cases where influence meets alleged crime, because taking down someone like Montana doesn't just get one man off the street, it shakes the entire scene that watched him rise. Then there's the association factor, and that's where things got even stickier. Montana was closely tied to Zillionaire Doe, who had already been under intense federal scrutiny after a series of raids in his neighborhood and the arrest of his brother. When investigators see two names that constantly overlap, same circles, same streets, same sound, they start connecting dots, whether those connections are hard facts or just assumptions. And in federal cases, even assumptions can put your name in the paperwork. Once that happens, it's almost impossible to erase. The next nail in the coffin came from the money trail. Flashy cars, designer fits, diamond chains, and endless stacks of cash on Instagram. It's a common look in rap, But it tells a different story to investigators. They don't see flexing, they see evidence. The rule is simple. If your income on paper doesn't match your lifestyle, prosecutors will claim the difference is drug money. In Montana's case, reports say the feds traced bank deposits, cash seizures, and high-end purchases that didn't line up with his streaming revenue or show payments. The numbers didn't add up, and in federal court, math speaks louder than music. Every dollar became a clue, every car became a question, and every photo with a money fan turned into another puzzle piece in their narrative. But it didn't stop at finances. Social media and lyrics became weapons too. Montana AS bars about moving pounds and running routes weren't seen as artistic expression. They were treated like coded confessions. Every time he posted a photo surrounded by cash or standing next to known associates, prosecutors circled it, cataloged it, and used it to paint him as a hands-on trafficker. What fans saw as creative expression, the government framed as incrimination. We've seen this strategy before, in major cases like Young Thug, SYSL indictment, or Rallo, federal conspiracy charges. It's the new era of prosecution, where your art becomes your evidence. The government has learned how to weaponize creativity, turning lyrics, music videos, and online personas into courtroom exhibits. And the scarier part? It works. Montana's family ties and neighborhood roots made him an even bigger target. To the feds, your environment speaks for you. If your block has a history of raids, arrests, or drug busts, they assume you re part of the ecosystem, whether you're removing product or just grew up around it. Montana's neighborhood had already been hit before, and his growing fame only drew more spotlight back to the same area. The moment his name started trending, so did the block that raised him, and the feds paid attention. Finally, there's the federal strategy itself. The feds rarely waste time chasing small fish. Their goal is to dismantle entire networks, and to do that, they aim for the people who sit at the crossroads of money, influence, and culture. Montana checked all three boxes perfectly. By indicting him, prosecutors could potentially pressure him into cooperating or use his case to connect dots for a larger RICO-style narrative, pulling in multiple players from both the streets and the rap game. To them, Montana wasn't just another artist. He was the bridge between music and movement, between the culture that thrives online and the street economy they've been trying to control. And that combination made him not just a suspect, but a statement. So when you really ask why the feds went after Montana 700, the answer couldn't be more clear. He represented far more than just himself. He was a living, breathing symbol of what happens when the streets merge with rap. To the federal government, Montana wasn't just another artist. He was a face that made a complex case easy to explain to a jury, a character who embodied everything they wanted to label as dangerous influence. He became the perfect example, a potential stepping stone toward a bigger case, a headline, and a statement. In their eyes, Montana 700 wasn't just a suspect, he was a message. They didn't just target what he allegedly did, they targeted who he was, who he stood next to, and what his image represented to the culture. He was connected, respected, and loud about it. And when a man with influence starts to reflect the raw reality of the streets on a national stage, that's when federal attention turns from curiosity to obsession. Montana's story is one of the oldest and saddest chapters in hip-hop. A young man who rose from the grind of his neighborhood, turned pain into poetry, and built his fame off authenticity. Fans loved him because he was real. He didn't fake the life he lived. He documented it. But that same reality, the proof that made him stand out, has now become the evidence stacked against him in a courtroom. Looking back, the signs were always there. Montana's street roots gave him credibility, but they also planted the seeds of risk. The same loyalty, hustle, and grind that made his name ring through Dallas are now being dissected by prosecutors who see every connection as a clue. His rise in rap amplified not only his talent, but also his exposure. Suddenly, he wasn't just being watched by fans. He was being monitored by agents. With charges officially filed, the government has made its move, and it's clear they intend to use Montana as a warning. To them, he's not just a musician, He's a walking example of how street credibility can flip into legal vulnerability overnight. They'll tell the jury that his life proves how the culture glorifies crime, and they'll use his success story as a way to justify their crackdown. His ties to zillionaire dough, the flashy lifestyle, the coded lyrics, and the ongoing surveillance around his block, all of it created the perfect storm. The prosecutors don't see art, they see evidence. They don't see hustle, they see hierarchy. And they don't see a young man trying to make it, they see an opportunity to make an example. To them, Montana 700 isn't an artist. He's a case study, a living diagram of how rap and street life can supposedly intertwine. They'll paint him as the poster child for their argument that hip-hop and criminal enterprise feed each other. And with federal conviction rates sitting above 90%, the fight ahead looks like a mountain with no map to the top. But the real lesson here isn't T about Montana alone. It's about the danger of mixing the streets with the mic. Rap thrives on authenticity because fans crave truth. But when that truth includes real crimes, real connections, and real surveillance, the line between expression and confession fades fast. What used to be art becomes ammunition, and what used to be performance becomes prosecution. For Montana, every lyric now carries weight. Every Instagram post, every money flash, every flex. They're no longer just moments of pride. They're pieces of a puzzle in the government's hands. Every move he made as an artist is being reinterpreted through the eyes of a prosecutor who wants a win. So what happens now? Two roads stand before him. He can fight it out in trial, facing the possibility of decades behind bars if the jury sides with the feds. Or he can take a plea deal, trading time for cooperation or a reduced sentence, possibly giving up more than his freedom in the process. Either path comes with a heavy cost. What's certain is that Montana's career, the dream he built from nothing, is now hanging by a thread. Fans who once celebrated his grind are left divided. The streets are watching, praying he makes it out, while others whisper that the system's already decided his fate. And as the smoke clears, one haunting question lingers in every conversation, every headline, every song that once echoed his name. Will Montana 700 survive this federal storm? Or will he become yet another cautionary tale, a rapper whose past chased him faster than fame could save him? Because in the world where art imitates life and life imitates crime, there is one truth that never fades. The streets might make you, but the system always comes to collect.